Vamp mentioned a purified hydrogen bomb. Any idea what it is?
A purified hydrogen bomb is a nuclear weapon that doesn't use a nuclear explosion to trigger a nuclear fusion reaction. There are two theories for triggering a purified hydrogen bomb. Of the two, our nation focused its research efforts on the laser inertial compression theory. Theoretically, it's the same as laser nuclear fusion. By solidifying deuterium and tritium at an extremely low temperature to create fuel pellets and bombarding these pellets with a high-output laser, the surface of the pellets evaporate. This creates a reaction that results in the inward compression of the pellets. The center portion of a pellet reaches the necessary extreme temperature and pressure conditions for confining nuclear fusion and thereby creating a fusion reaction. I understand that research in this area continued into the last century, but I'd heard they hit a wall when they couldn't come up with a miniature laser capable of the necessary ultra-high output. From what you tell...
Stillman, tell me something about Fat Man.
Well, to start, he was born the son of a clockmaker, neglected by his parents and without friends. It seems that he spent a lot of time by himself in his father's workshop. Maybe that was the reason, I'm not sure, but apparently he has had a tremendous fascination with clock mechanics since he was a child. It was at the age of 10 that a guidebook that he found on the internet changed his life forever. That guidebook served as a basis of his eventually piecing together an atomic bomb. It was from there that he came to be known as Fat Man. And soon enough, there was no one associated with bombs that didn't know his name. In a sense, Fat Man was a hero. Although what he did was recognized only by those in the trade, I'm sure that it served to greatly stir the ego of the teenage. But he leaves his mark nowhere else. Apparently, he was hated and shunned by everyone in school. So he went on to focus all his energy on explosives. He scorned the reality that surrounded him and instead chose to embrace a world that would easily grant him recognition. Well, to be sure, it never amounted to anything more than, say, occasionally bringing a gun. And eventually, Fat Man came to Indian Head, the exercise training facilities of the Naval School Explosive Ordnance Disposal at which I was a lecturer. He absorbed all kinds of knowledge, as if he hungered for bombs. Close to 20% of the students at Indian Head flunk out of what is truly a hellish curriculum. Despite this environment, he achieved extraordinarily high marks that were without precedent. After leaving Indian Head, he joined up with Nest, said to be the most accomplished bomb disposal unit. It was there that he apparently got into some trouble.
What exactly?
You got me, but Fat Man was definitely not cut out for group operations from the very start. Having been ousted from Nest, he was picked up by Dead Cell, which was already becoming notorious for being a motley crew of sorts. It seems that it was through surprise attack maneuvers later conducted by Dead Cell that Fat Man completely subdued his. While being the most peculiar individual among my students, he was also the most talented. Be sure not to underestimate him. Are we clear?
So Iroquois Pliskin was an alias?
Of course.
And the rank of lieutenant junior grade?
Made it up.
That's just great. Anyway, I get the Pliskin part, but what about Iroquois?
Iroquois is a Frankified version of the Algonquin word for rattlesnakes. It's what they called their enemies.
Algonquin?
The Algonquin Nation, one of the many groups of Native Americans who used to call Manhattan Island their home. The majority of tribes, in what's now the state of New York, were a part of the Algonquin Nation.
So this was a stronghold of snakes.
By the way, Manhattan... What's up, Ryden?
Out of my way. Let me talk.
You want to talk to Otacon?
Yes.
Yeah? What is it?
Up to now, scientists have continued to be active participants in war. What's your opinion?
There's no doubt that war has been an ideal event that fuels the progress of science. But therein lies the trap. We scientists must establish some form of work ethic. It's a tragedy that both the government and the military act as sponsors to modern science.
What are you talking about? The atom and hydrogen bombs were born from laboratories owned and operated by universities and private enterprises. Los Alamos and the Lawrence Livermore labs were run by universities. There's nothing strange about that.
Weapons development and universities. This may come as a surprise, but science requires that information be exchanged freely.
You're referring to the will of Professor Oppenheimer, aren't you?
For me, science and weapons always existed at different levels. I never thought that my research results would bring about misfortune to others. That was until the Shadow Moses incident.
I have no regrets.
That's where you're wrong. We scientists know the dangers of a nuclear threat. It's up to us to protect the people. We can't allow it to be exploited by nations or their politics. Man and nuclear weapons cannot coexist. Mere mortals were never meant to handle nuclear fusion.
Science defines me. My government respects me.
I did a quick inspection. Arsenal Gear's security system is similar to the antibiotic function of a living creature's immune system. Surveillance of the inner system is handled by periodic scans, using a number of agents with the capacity for detecting data that doesn't belong in the system. Once the agents detect any invading data, the information is passed on to an antibody production system. From there, a program referred to as an antibody agent is autonomously produced to neutralize or eliminate the invading data. Added to that, there's a solid barrier existing between GW's optic neural net, its physical and logical base, and the other general nets. Referred to as the bit-brain barrier, this wall is a filtering system for preventing the infiltration of foreign data. This security system makes it very difficult to attack the system from the outside. Raiden, I asked EE about the disk you have in your possession. Basically, it's a set of computer worm programs. Each worm is structured to mimic the data units that compose GW. As a result, GW's scan agents are unable to detect the program. In short, the program doesn't trigger GW's antibody production system. What's more, the program can penetrate the bit-brain barrier that surrounds GW. Once the worm program enters the neural net, it transforms the surrounding neurons. The transformed neurons become solid and can no longer function as neural nets. As time passes, the neurons transform and perish, stripping the overall system of its power to define and comprehend data. This in turn causes language disorder and memory loss, leading to the shutdown of functions as the Harrier II is an upgraded version of the world's first practical V-stall fighter plane. By shifting the propulsion of the engine nozzles on the sides, the plane can handle short-distance vertical takeoffs and landings. The payload capacity of the Harrier II is considerably larger than its predecessor due to improved engine output. As a result, it carries more armament, starting with a 25mm machine gun pod on the fuselage pylon. There are air-to-surface rockets on both wings and various pods for air-to-air missiles and cluster bombs. You won't be able to take out one of these with small arms fire. The fact is, we're currently aboard a Ka-60 Kasatka helicopter, a multi-purpose military aircraft of the Russian Kamov Design Bureau. This copter is capable of handling various missions, including troop and supply transport, medical evacuation, target acquisition for attack copters, and all-weather scouting. Equip it with the latest avionics and electronic equipment, and the Kasatka can handle communication and electronic jamming as well as other special operations. The copter's designed for survival in combat, and the main systems are expandable. The rotors are capable of functioning if they've been punctured. In addition, the Kasatka features a polyurethane-filled fuel tank to minimize the danger of explosion. However, the Kasatka cannot hold its own against a Harrier. It's only suitable for providing you with air support. What I'm trying to say is...
Emma, this is about GW, but is it really possible to automate the scale of censorship? Do we have that kind of computing capability?
Of course we do. And it would be impossible to do this unless it was automated. There's too much information for human beings to handle. Let's take your specialty, military operation, as an example, shall we? The U.S. military began to aggressively adopt the digital model in both combat and daily operations at the turn of the century.
That's true. Battlefield networking, the revolution in military affairs, and of course, the VR training regimen. Information is the deciding factor in the outcome of conflicts. It's because of that reality that the military's invested trillions of dollars in high-tech weapons and equipment. There's no night or day in war or information.
Right, 24/7. There's nothing that we couldn't see through electronic eyes and ears.
And that's what gave us the capability to collect, analyze, and understand tactical data in real time?
No, just the opposite. What we ended up with was too huge a load. We knew literally everything, from the position of every platoon on both sides to the number of clips every infantryman had left. As a result, nobody could figure out what the big picture meant. Not even the most experienced and skilled general could, because we're flesh and blood.
Humans can't adapt to the information age. Is that it?
Basically. No human being can make an intelligent command decision in the information overload of digitized wars. So R&D into computerized systems to assist in the process was initiated. The Defense Department tested a large-scale AI-driven system for troop logistics during the Gulf War. Apparently, they got the results they were looking for.
And you're saying that World...
Metal Gear Ray was originally designed by the Marines as a countermeasure against other Metal Gear variations. But the mass-produced model is only based on the Marines' design. It's been redesigned to guard Arsenal gear. Now it protects another Metal Gear. I heard all this from Emma. It seems that the mass production model Metal Gear Rays have cooperative engagement capability, with GW as the primary control system. Several Rays can connect with Arsenal gear and mutually exchange data. Within this unified domain, all Rays can cooperatively manage threats through notification, pursuit, and interception, all in a lifelike manner. All for one and one for all. There's no weak spot. When protected by a pack of Rays, Arsenal gear can move without crews. Tengu soldiers carry the P-90 personal defense weapon. It lies somewhere in between a rifle and a pistol. The designers of the P-90 and its ammunition focused on the convenience of a pistol and the penetrating power of a rifle. It fires the new 5.7 by 28mm cartridge. The lightweight rounds feature a projectile weight of 2.02 grams and a muzzle velocity of 715 meters per second and low recoil. Its piercing power is also quite high. It can penetrate an ordinary bulletproof vest at a distance of 100 meters. The body is made entirely of plastic and perfectly symmetrical, so even left-handed shooters can easily use it. It carries a 50-round magazine. The magazine is mounted on top, so it doesn't get in the way when firing from a prone position. But the biggest threats are its rapid firing rate and its accuracy. It's probably Tengu soldiers wear a special kind of combat suit that was developed by DARPA. It seems to utilize some kind of exoskeletal technology. The suit encases the soldier in a layer of armor and is outfitted with actuators which utilize artificial muscle tissue to amplify the soldier's strength and increase his chances of survival. Using the human strength amplification provided by the artificial muscle, a soldier can move faster, travel farther, and carry heavier weapons than normal. In other words, he has superior scouting and combat abilities and can basically dominate the battlefield. Any soldiers you face who are wearing this special kind of suit will be able to move with superhuman agility. The engine system of Metal Gear Ray appears to be outfitted with artificial muscle tissue. The artificial muscle consists of actuators that resemble human muscle tissue. It's made of a macromolecular fiber that conducts electricity. This system is different from ordinary engines based on mechanical activators and oil pressure. It's capable of many different kinds of movement using a single kind of engine. In other words, it's capable of performing a complex series of motions smoothly and effortlessly. Ray's movements are both quick and precise. Ray's armor is made of a state-of-the-art ceramic titanium alloy. A network of simple sensor arrays stretches around the body, including conductive nanotubes that connect the surface and the interior of the armor. When the condition of the armor changes, self-diagnostic systems located throughout the armor detect and respond to this change, like a network of autonomic reflex nerves. This acts as a damage control response system, performing functions such as shutting down a damaged section or rerouting signals through auxiliary circuits. At the same time, any holes and tears in the armor are repaired to some degree by a kind of nanopaste that's secreted automatically from valves near the damaged area. This nanopaste almost makes Ray seem like it's bleeding. You probably won't be able to pierce Ray's armor with the weapons you're carrying. You'll have to aim for the head, where the armor is relatively thin. Aim for the power suit that Solidus is wearing is a state-of-the-art exoskeleton that makes use of artificial muscle tissue. It gives the person wearing it superhuman motor skill capabilities. It's the same technology used in Ray's engine system and the Tengu soldiers' combat suits. Your skull suit uses a little bit of it too. A number of sensors stretch between the surface and interior of the suit like a neural network. When these sensors detect an impact, the artificial muscle in the suit reacts instantaneously by automatically contracting and diffusing the damage. So you can't just chop him in half with your sword. Your suit uses the same technology. You could almost say that your suit, Solidus' suit...
Raiden, you won't be able to use any of the enemy's equipment.
Why not?
You should know that all active weapons are equipped with a personal identification system. The owner enters their required user ID information during the weapon registration or at the start of a mission. If anyone other than the registered user tries to fire the weapon, the ID system will not authorize the action.
But these are black market Russian weapons. How can they be equipped with identification functionality?
They must have been customized by the terrorists themselves. These are professionals we're dealing with, and they certainly won't let their own equipment be used against them.
I'm guessing it's the same for the Navy SEALs gear?
Right.
How am I supposed to procure weapons then?
Find the ones that haven't yet been individualized. Everything you find in the item box is clean.
Oh, so that was another rehearsal for this mission.
No, a simulation. Not the same thing as a rehearsal. Leverage the experience from your VR training, Raiden. A perfectly real VR experience is in itself an accomplished result. Have confidence. The tanker accident 2 years ago released crude oil containing massive quantities of endocrine disruptors. The fish that absorbed them were then eaten by seagulls, which further concentrated the endocrine disruptors in their bodies. What sort of outcome this will lead to is still currently under review and is yet unclear. It just goes to show that finishing the cleanup of ocean oil spills does not mean that environmental restoration efforts end there. If the big shell explodes, massive quantities of chlorinated chemicals used in killing marine bacteria will go up in flames along with the crude oil. If that happens, expect a large amount of harmful chemical substances, including dioxins, to be released into the atmosphere. Dioxins are common nomenclature for polychlorinated dibenzodioxin and polychlorinated dibenzofuran. They are organic chloride compounds that are highly acute and toxic, and are powerful chemicals that can cause cancer, genetic disorders, and birth defects. On top of that, they do not decompose easily, nor dissolve in water, making it easy for them to accumulate within the bodies of living organisms. The environmental impact on the bay and coastal area ecosystem would be unfathomable. Environmental restoration would likely require several generations. That is why we cannot allow them to blow up the big shell. Raiden.
What you see flying before you is a Cypher. It's a saucer-type UAV for surveillance and communication support of land and marine operations. It may look strange, but it's very stable. The Cypher is capable of vertical takeoffs and landings in tight areas measuring as small as 3.5 meters. Also, it features a fully autonomous system that allows for tracking and analysis of man's. The stuff used in that trap is Semtex. It's a plastic explosive like C4. Developed in former Czechoslovakia, the stuff was called the terrorist C4 back in the Cold War days. Made from RDX and PETN, Semtex is easy to handle and very powerful. The stuff can devastate an area. Whatever you do, don't get caught in its explosion. Looks like you've got an M4. The M4 is an assault carbine favored by the U.S. SOCOM. It's a descendant of the M1 carbine used in World War II. The 4 refers to the fact that it's the fourth carbine to be officially adopted by the American military. Basically, it was developed for the Special Forces using the M16A as a base. The M4 carries 30 rounds of 5.56mm by 45 SS-109s. By the way, carbines are short-barreled rifles originally developed for cavalry use, but as far as you're concerned, I see you've managed to get a hold of some C4 plastic explosive. Composed of 91% RDX and 9% inert plasticizers, it's a white clay-like material. It's a very stable explosive with over 1.3 times the power of TNT. Immune to heat or shock, C4 will only explode when triggered by a detonator. Since your wireless detonator is equipped with both a scrambler and encryption, you don't have to worry about the C4 being accidentally triggered by other wavelengths such as those emitted by jamming devices. You set the C4 with the weapon button and detonate it with the punch button. One other thing. You've got an RGB-6, a Croatian-manufactured 40mm 6-round grenade launcher. It's a weapon that was unavailable in VR training. The RGB-6 has a spring-driven revolver-type cylinder for handling 6 grenades. It delivers grenades with greater accuracy than throwing the things, and it's effective for taking out enemies with body armor, not to mention those hiding behind objects. Since a launched grenade travels on a parabolic trajectory, hitting a target depends. You've got yourself a remote-controlled missile. Referred to as Nikita, it's a wireless guided projectile. It's a surveillance missile based on micro-air vehicle technology. You control it by watching the image transmitted from the CCD camera mounted on the missile. Although it's primarily designed for scouting missions, it carries a small explosive charge that allows a long-distance attack. You can also trigger the charge by removing it from equip status following the missile's launch. You won't be able to move while controlling the missile. Also, you'll have to be careful that you don't run out of fuel while it's in flight. Unlike VR training, you won't have a bird's eye view to help. I see the old man set you up with a Sensor A unit. Aside from C4, explosives continually release their own specific particles. Based on ion mobility spectrometry technology, Sensor A is capable of detecting particle clusters. Simply put, the detector can sniff out C4. The detected C4 appears on radar as a cloud-like shape. The cloud indicates the rough look. You're using Sensor B. It's designed to pick out the odorless C4 set up by Fat Man. Unlike Sensor A, which detects explosive particles, this unit detects the explosive inside an object sealed by neutron emission. The sensor should be able to detect C4, despite the fact that it's been securely sealed to prevent odor, or more specifically, the diffusion of explosive particles. When neutrons pass through an object, the hydrogen material it contains interacts to produce a rear diffusion. By measuring this rear diffusion with the detector, the resulting value is analyzed to determine the existence of an explosive. Simply equipping yourself with this unit and the sensor will automatically scan the area around you and will sound a warning if there's an explosive nearby. Always remember that the shorter the intervals between the warning sounds, the AK is an outstanding rifle in terms of precision and reliability. As evidenced by widespread licensed manufacturing, not to mention large quantities of illegal reproductions, the AK is in high demand around the world. It is often used as reference for the design of new rifle models. Designs for Israel's Galil, Finland's Valmet, and other rifles are based on the basic structure of the AK. You have a smaller model of the AKS-74 that was designed for use by Special Forces personnel. The stock will only extend to a maximum length of 726 millimeters, a feature that makes the rifle easier to handle. Raiden, don't ever turn your back on that Olga woman. Olga Gerlukovich, daughter of Colonel Sergei Gerlukovich, ex-GRU and former Spetsnaz commander. She's the leader of Colonel Gerlukovich's private army that's been wandering around the Big Shell. Those men were gathered by Colonel Gerlukovich. Following his death, she inherited his command and now exercises full control. Her father's name was widely respected throughout the old Soviet regime, and he was the goal of just about every military man.
Why would a respected soldier become a leader of those cutthroats?
The collapse of the Republic resulted in a lot of unemployed soldiers. Most found themselves suddenly cast out into the civilian world, hopelessly lost. The colonel took these men in. He organized a mercenary army and led his men from battle to battle in various disputed regions around the world, hoping that one day he would rebuild his homeland. Rumor has it that during the Shadow Moses incident, he planned a rendezvous with Liquid Snake's men and assist in their uprising. I assume that the revolt figured into his reconstruction plans for the Soviet regime. I also heard that Ocelot, Liquid's right-hand man, was an old friend of the colonel's back in the old days of the Soviet Union. In any case, Olga inherited her father's military genius and has become a force to be reckoned with. She was born and raised on the battlefield, and she's as tough as she looks. Not my ideal choice for a date.
You sound like you've met her.
No, I haven't had the pleasure.
The rumors about Big Shell being a big cover-up are all true.
Otacon?
I had Snake check everything out. Sure, there's some facilities to clean up the pollution, but they're not running at full capacity. Don't you think it's funny that even though 2 years have gone by since the incident, they haven't managed to clean up all the crude oil? Of course, the media doesn't report that kind of thing. I think they're having fresh shipments of crude oil brought in to replace the stuff they've cleaned up. The story you were told about toxic chemicals being released if the plant were blown up also seems pretty fishy. I don't think it's actually true. Information is being suppressed on a huge scale. These guys seem to think that the new Metal Gear is worth all the effort and money they're spending on it.
So I've been lied to all along.
No, I think even your CO didn't know what was going on, and that's probably what he's been telling you.
I didn't mean by the colonel. I meant by you.
Huh? We never lied to you. We just didn't tell you everything, that's all. You know, you're a pretty interesting guy. You're just like Snake said.
What did he say?
That you're a weak, simple-minded, stubborn fool.
A weak, simple-minded...
Ah, don't worry. He didn't mean anything bad by it.
Nothing bad? Well, what could possibly be worse than that? That lying, useless, backstabbing, mincing son of a...
Ryden, I'm his friend. I know him better than anyone else. I know he's not that kind of guy.
Yeah, so what?
And, by the way, there's one more thing you should probably know about Snake.
What?
He's right here.
Jack, how far do you think the Patriot's digital control extends?
I don't really know, but it probably influences a lot of what goes on in our everyday lives.
Even mundane things like which movies and songs become a hit and what kind of clothes we wear?
I think taste would be the easiest thing to manipulate. I mean, think about the kinds of film and bands everyone wants to go to see. It's whatever's at the top of the charts.
And if the charts are made up...
Exactly.
But you can't really control individual taste. It's too closely tied to personality.
I don't know about that. Trends have always been about following the leader.
Not necessarily.
The age of direct personal interaction is over. So is the idea of word-of-mouth communication. Rose, you have any friends you've met online?
Huh? Yeah, I do.
How many?
Well, if you count only the ones I talk to a lot, I'd say about 20.
How many of those have you actually met?
1 or 2 tops.
Uh-huh. That's how it is for everyone, I guess. And even if your online buddies had fake identities and were circulating false information, you'd have no way of knowing.
Fake identities?
Right. And there'd be no way for you to know for sure.
Well, what about people who do meet face to face then? Like us.
Us?
Have you ever really shown me the real you?
I wouldn't even know the real me myself.
But you're being honest with yourself now. Well, that's how I see it.
Well, how am I being honest?
I've never seen you show so much feeling. Fear, anger, even a kind of giddiness. It may seem a strange thing to say, but you're living out loud for the first time that I've seen.
I'm just trying to get the job done. This is war, you know.
I do know that.
Look at all these bugs. The seawater is polluted with crude oil, and yet they can still survive.
It's an altered bug that can resolve crude oil.
Altered?
Yes, through genetic engineering. It was created in the lab to combat frequent oil spills. It doesn't exist naturally. The bug is genetically altered with DNA from a bacteria called Pseudomonas, which can decompose crude oil. It has an enzyme in its body that can break up oil, and was modified so it instinctively consumes any crude oil that it absorbs. One of the reasons the Big Shell has little oil pollution is because of this bug. It also helps in reducing costs and the number of spill maintenance workers. It's a form of bioremediation.
Olga Gerlukovich. She's the daughter of former GRU Colonel Sergei Gerlukovich. After the Federation collapsed, the colonel apparently commanded a group of mercenaries that drifted between area conflicts and civil wars. After he died, it looks like she took over control of the group. She has more notches on her gun than you do. Underestimating her prowess will get you hurt. Jack, here's the data I found on Fortune. She goes by Fortune. She leads Dead Cell. Her real name is Helena Dolph Jackson. 2 years ago, her father, Commandant of the Marine Corps, Scott Dolph, was killed in a training accident. Her husband was the former Dead Cell leader, Colonel Jackson. Died in captivity, my data says. After her husband's death, she joined the military. She didn't have any combat experience, but was soon singled out for a particular trait and was reassigned to Dead Cell.
What trait?
Luck. She was real lucky, like miraculously lucky. Wherever she went, bullets curved away, and missions always ended in success.
Is that some kind of joke?
I thought so too, but there is not a single record of her ever being wounded.
Ryden. Rose did a bit of research on Fortune's weapon.
The big rifle that she carries appears to be a personal railgun.
Railgun?
Yes, an electromagnetic gun that fires bullets with magnetic force. As a movable conductor, it uses plasma electrons to boost acceleration capabilities. The kinetic energy of the ammunition is approximately 10 megajoules. Incidentally, that of a 140mm smooth bore gun ammunition is 20 megajoules.
I can't believe something like that even exists.
It's not available, though. What she has is only a prototype.
That thing sure doesn't sound like a prototype.
Problems with the rail plasma and inter-rail electromagnetic release have yet to be solved. Evaluations exist that criticize it as unacceptable as a field weapon because of the high risk of accidental discharge.
But hers doesn't?
Most likely, probably because she's lucky.
Unbelievable.
Either way, it's a weapon that she alone can wield, that's for sure.
Yeah, and a weapon that's
I looked up information on Fat Man. Fat Man, the emperor of explosives. You've already heard how he manufactured an atomic bomb at the age of 10. He appears to have been known throughout the world of explosives since he was a child. He entered the Naval School Explosive Ordnance Disposal at Indian Head and graduated at the top of his class. That's around the time that he met Stillman. He was assigned to the Nuclear Emergency Search Team. He quit soon after, though. After that, he joined Dead Cell as an explosive specialist. Jack, I found data on the briefcase used to unlock the nuclear launch codes. It appears to be a fail-safe system using the president's DNA base order and input of his physiological data as its key. The lock is said to be impenetrable.
In other words, the president himself is the only one who can enter the password.
Right. On top of that, as Ames mentioned before, the password becomes invalid when the president's brainwaves, heartbeat, etc. are not within normal limits.
So the president entered that code by his own free will after all. But why would the U.S. president lend a hand to terrorists?
How should I don't have information like that.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't.
Also, it seems that the need to reconfirm the code after a set amount of time is true.
Meaning that the president is safe, right? How about the story of the black case also serving as the launch key to a new model?
If they caused a nuclear explosion over Manhattan, there would be serious repercussions. Blast energy from a high-altitude nuclear detonation is released mostly as gamma rays. This would emit a strong electromagnetic pulse through a secondary reaction within the ambient atmosphere. The pulse itself would last for a mere 500 nanoseconds, but in terms of power emitted, it would instantaneously release 500 billion megawatts. This electromagnetic pulse would cause a high-voltage surge through antennas and cable, frying all circuits. Scalar waves from a nuclear explosion have a higher degree of penetration than normal electromagnetic waves. Civilian electromagnetic protection devices would be useless. The area affected would likely range over several thousand kilometers. All electronic devices within New York would probably be rendered completely useless.
If something like this happened...
Panic on a worldwide scale would be unavoidable.
The feasibility of using an EMP blast from a nuclear weapon as an attack has been researched for decades. The Starfish Project, carried out on Johnston Island in the South Pacific in 1962, is one example.
Wasn't that to study the effects of high-altitude nuclear detonation on radios and radars?
Ostensibly, yes. Electromagnetic weapon development had already begun prior to that, since the time of Project Argus.
Now they're trying to use it for real?
Aimed at the heart of our nation.
Jack, I did a search on the Big Shell. The tanker accident 2 years ago spilled a catastrophic amount of crude oil into the bay. The Big Shell is an offshore decontamination facility built to restore the Manhattan Bay environment by trapping and disposing the spilt oil. Around the perimeter of the Big Shell, oil fences were erected in order to protect against any further dispersal of the oil. You see those steeples erected here and there in the fence? Those are piles to draw up the polluted seawater. Gathered seawater is carried to the pump room in Strut A first, and all of the larger garbage is collected in sediment pool number 1 of Strut D. This is followed by a 2-step purification process in the Shell 2 core water reserve in which oil is removed by microbes. Then it is sent to Strut L and sterilized, and finally once again carried to the surface piles and flushed back into the bay.
Did the military database include information on the marine filtration facility's structure as well?
No, I didn't use the... Strut A is a pump facility that supplies the energy to circulate the polluted water drawn from the sea throughout each of the Big Shell sections. The south side is the actual pump facility itself, while the north side is the control room. Strut B is a generator facility that generates electricity for the Big Shell. The first floor is its substation. Strut C is the residential area. It supports life at sea for all of the workers on the Big Shell. That being said, almost all systems are completely automated, so there aren't many workers to be found. Strut D is sediment pool number 1. It's a facility where extracted polluted water is stored without being disturbed, so that its large pollutants settle and are purged from. The Strut E roof functions as a heliport, while inside it serves as an aerial transport hub for materials to each of the other struts. Because its sea entrances are cut off by oil fences, there is hardly any transportation of goods into the Big Shell by seafaring vessels. Almost all of the materials brought in are via the roof heliport. Inside Strut E is an automated system to sort materials. It recognizes cardboard boxes and separates them appropriately. By automatically delivering packages to each strut, efforts have been made to streamline manpower. Strut F is the storage center. I think a variety of materials for maintenance of the big shell are stored there. There might be something that would come in handy. Why don't you look around? The Shell 1 core is what its name implies, the center of the big shell. The first basement floor is a capacious meeting hall. I'm sure that's where they held the welcome reception for the president and the Environmental Protection Inspection Team. But its core function is concentrated in the second basement floor computer room. This computer room is where the flow of polluted water and the status of filtration is observed, in addition to being where all tasks for other facilities are carried out. I can understand why the Shell 2 core is where the actual filtration system resides, or at least it used to. Now it's just a shadow of its former self. Here, water mixed with crude oil was filtered using antagonist bacteria in the microbial decomposition of hydrocarbons. Below the first floor basement is a gigantic vat for this purpose. What happened was that this vat broke and flooded the floor. The first floor, which is not flooded, houses the air purification facility that eliminates the stench from the polluted water. Manhattan is right in our backyard here, you know. There's plenty of reason. Strut L used to be the effluent processing facility. It appears to be where seawater expunged of oil was treated with chlorine and other chemicals to sterilize and disinfect the water so that it could be made suitable for flushing back into the ocean.
Raiden, you have to beat Solidus. This is your last duty.
We're not just pawns in some simulation game, you know.
Yes, you are. You're nothing but mere weapons, no different from fighter jets or tanks.
What the?
The old model destroyed 4 years ago was Rex.
The new amphibious model is Ray.
Both of these are the same as the code names used by the U.S. Armed Forces to refer to Japanese warplanes during World War II.
Your code name, Raiden, too, comes from the Japanese Navy's name for one of its interceptors.
Stop it. I'm not a weapon.
Oh, really? Do you know the code name the U.S. Armed Forces used for the Japanese fighter Raiden?
It was Jack. Both of you are just weapons to be used and thrown away.
Just weapons to be used on the battlefield. Just pawns in a game, exactly as you said.
And a weapon has no right to think for itself. Now.
Jack, I looked into Mr. X. I mean Deep Throat. During the Shadow Moses incident, Solid Snake did receive help from a guy who called himself Deep Throat. His true identity appears to be that of former Foxhound Unit member Gray Fox.
Gray Fox, huh?
Correct. His real name is Frank Yeager, the only member of Foxhound allowed to use the title of Fox. He was its best member. In Outer Heaven, he holed up in the stronghold ahead of Snake. He helped him and brought an end to the standoff. But in Zanzibar, he joined forces with Big Boss and became the leader of the upheaval. That's where he fought and lost to Snake. Fox was mortally injured and was picked up by the military. After that, it looks like he was used as the guinea pig in power exoskeleton and gene therapy experiments.
Power exoskeleton?
Cyborg ninjas, as some people called them. Detailed records were lost in the research center fire, though.
After that, he ended up in Shadow Moses?
Yes. But why he showed up there is not in the records. Some people believe that it was to get revenge against Snake, but there is nothing definite to go by.
So now he's...
No, he died in Shadow Moses. That is...
Colonel, I want some background information on Emma Emmerich.
I've got it right here, direct from the National Security Agency's personnel files. Apparently, she was involved in some sort of high-level project, but there's no details on that. Her record shows that she resigned from the agency 2 years ago. Emma Emmerich, full name Emma Emmerich Danziger. Members of her family call her EE. After divorcing Hal Emmerich's father, her mother took Emma to England and raised her there. Danziger is her mother's maiden name, but she prefers Emmerich. After returning home to England, her mother married Robinson, a businessman. The following details are from a report filed with the NSA when she joined the agency. Just before graduating from high school, Emma injured Robinson in self-defense during an alleged assault on her person. As a result of this incident, she followed in the footsteps of her stepbrother, Hal Emmerich, and left home to enroll in Oxford. It is believed that at this particular point in her life, she was extremely angered by the fact that her brother failed to protect her. Consequently, she lost all family connections and is very resentful. She seems to believe that her brother is to blame for everything. While attending Oxford, she was noted for her success in a deciphering event sponsored by British GCHQ.
They may not be blood related, but she sure sounds like Otacon's sister.
There's more. Raiden, do you recall a certain situation that's more or less become a legend among hackers? To refresh your memory, at the time, just about all of our nation's communications and information resources were concentrated at NSA in Fort Meade. In fact, NSA's basement facility operated round the clock to amass data obtained not only from public communications, but everything from satellite to wiretap operations as well. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that whoever controlled the NSA facility could move the world. On January 24th, in the year 2000, the facility suffered a total system shutdown for a 73-hour period.
Did they ever figure out the cause?
It's believed that a small group within the government had arranged the incident with the assistance of a notorious group of crackers. The result was a full review of NSA's safety measures, which in turn led to the decision to shift the data-gathering operations to an isolated location that would be safe from physical attack as well as cyber terrorism.
And where might that be?
My security clearance couldn't get me that information, but I did find out that one of the key members of the hacker group was none other than Emma Emmerich. Although she started off as a specialist in artificial intelligence and complex logic, Emma is now regarded as a computer genius.
That would make her a prime candidate for recruitment in the intelligence community, wouldn't it? And knowing most of the intelligence agencies, I doubt fair play was a major concern in their recruiting efforts.
Your assumption's correct. The government played on her weakness, her strong hate for Hal Emmerich, the brother who left her when she was 6 years old.
She hates him that much?
When she was 6 years old, Emma and her father were involved in a pool accident. She survived, but her father drowned.
What did the police have to say about that?
The report states it was an accidental death.
Isn't that about the time that Otacon left his home and family?
Exactly. But I don't have any idea why he chose to do so.
Does Emma blame Otacon for her father's death?
I don't think so. Her hate seems to stem from the fact that she believes Otacon abandoned her. You see, although the two weren't directly related, they were said to be very close. It's rumored that sibling rivalry was what launched her career as a hacker. 4 years ago, the government leaked her the details of the Shadow Moses incident. In doing so, they were able to recruit her for the NSA. I also have little doubt that they also used the NSA hacking affair as a means to convince her to cooperate.
You think that her hate drove her to frame Snake and Otacon?
That I don't know.
This is my favorite Chinese saying. Better to be first among roosters than last among bulls. Of course, the meaning's clear. If you have to choose between being a chicken or a cow, pick the chicken. Cows are always being messed with by aliens. Cattle mutilations are up, you know. Why go looking for trouble, right? If an enemy spots you, you'll be in more trouble than a cow on a UFO. You stay out of their sight.
Why would aliens be in an old Chinese proverb?
Everyone knows they've been visiting us for thousands of years.
News to me.
You know the story about Achilles in Paris? The moral here is, something about his heel. Anyway, even the great and virtually immortal hero Achilles was finally done in by Paris. Talk about a dangerous city. So don't get complacent. The mission can turn around and get you.
Wasn't Paris a person?
What?
Paris, I thought he was a...
Snake. There's a time and a place for conspiracy theories. Please, I'm trying to concentrate here.
Huh? Sorry?
You're using the anti-personnel sensor, I see. It measures the electromagnetic fields and heartbeat of life forms and converts the data into vibrations. If an enemy draws near, it will vibrate. The stronger the vibration, the closer the enemy is. But remember, when using the anti-personnel sensor, you'll only be able to feel the vibrations coming. You have the thermal goggles equipped, huh? They provide night vision by using variances in heat distribution to create an image. It uses a two-dimensional solid-state projection system to create high-res images at 60 FPS in real time. You heard the Commandant mention the NMD, the National Missile Defense Program. It was conceptualized late last century as a defense network to detect and engage enemy ICBMs launched at the continental United States. But at the same time, it came under fire for contributing to nuclear proliferation. The MIRVing of ballistic missiles and the increase in weapon lethality were some of the byproducts of these defense R&Ds. There was a lot of opposition from the international community on the grounds that the program violated the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. Russia and China were especially vocal in their criticism. Program deployment is a ways off in any case. The military hasn't been able to come up with a good technology to discriminate between actual targets and decoys. There are also other tech, so the Commandant says the Navy is leaning on them, huh? I'm sure the Navy isn't happy about the new Metal Gear prototype being developed. From what I can tell, the new model can make an approach, launch an attack, and execute takeoffs from the ocean without any support. If the weapon makes it past the testing stage, it could render aircraft carriers, battleships, even submarines obsolete. It's a matter of life or death for the Navy as the Marine Corps' defining character is that of an emergency response team in crisis situations. But the Army's been steadily enlarging its own crisis response capabilities, building on the strength of their medium brigade. Analysis is that the Marine Corps sees this as an infringement on their own domain and is more than a little alarmed. We both know that Metal Gear Rex was being developed for deployment by the Army, so it does make sense that the Marines are trying to compete with their own version. Didn't think Gerlukovich was involved, of all people.
Ocelot's former CO, and a man with a private army of ex-Russian military and GRU soldiers. I don't like it.
And Liquid was planning to team up with that bunch at Shadow Moses.
All he managed to do back then was to provide a toy or two. Looks like he's had enough of sponsoring insurrections.
So this time he's out here himself. I guess he's after Metal Gear?
History repeats itself. Metal Gear has enough strategic clout to upset the balance of military power overnight. He must be dreaming of Mother Russia's return to glory.
Like you said, history repeats itself. Some people never change.
Maybe it's the world that doesn't, or won't, change.
Maybe the cipher's what it looks like. A flying surveillance saucer. It's an unmanned aerial vehicle used for ground and ocean surveillance, and it also assists in communication. It can take off and land vertically, and uses a ducted airstream from its rotors and the surrounding shroud to fly. The one you saw was the type used by the Army, if I recall. But I can't see the Army officially cooperating with a top-secret Marine Corps project.
No, which means that there's someone besides us and the Russians that are interested in the new Metal Gear prototype.
Ciphers can stay airborne for about 3 hours, so there should be an integrated mobile ground station controlling its flight pattern and output nearby. It's got to be on land. I'll bet you anything it's disguised as a regular truck or something, driving... So that's the Ka-60 Kasatka, a multi-purpose military helicopter built by Kamov, the Russian aerospace firm. It adapts to a variety of missions: troop and weapons transport, medevac, target marking for attack choppers, even all-weather surveillance missions. It uses Fenestron-type tail rotors. That's what makes the distinct rotor sound that you picked up. It is a Russian helicopter, but we can't be sure that the hijackers are Russian military. After all, Kamov did make a civilian version, the Ka-62. And there's also the KA-60. When the photos are in, we'll put them online and blow this whole thing wide open on the web.
Don't you think that the authorities will just shut us down?
Probably, but it won't matter. There'll be mirror sites spawning within minutes after those images go up. We won't even have to ask. People will be grabbing the pictures. There's no way anyone can stop it. Information has a life of its own, and as long as it lasts, it'll keep existing, even if it has to change its form or location.
Life?
Yeah, the desire of people to learn, the demand for data.
That's called idle curiosity in my book.
Everyone's got some of that, and sometimes it can pave the way. That workstation is hooked up to the greater military network. The speech in the holds is being relayed out through that machine. We'll be making use of it too. I managed to get in through an Army IC router in Ohio. All I had to do from there was use the Link 16 to remotely install a few drivers and an application onto that workstation. So your camera can talk to their computer now. Hey, even military networks use products based on commercial technology. Nothing too unfamiliar there. Besides, I cut myself a back door when I still had access. I had a lot of access privileges when we were developing Rex. Hey, are you listening?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Anyway, the program will compress, encrypt, and packetize the photo's image data. I used Baton for encryption, by the way. And the beauty of it is, the packets are disguised to look like the TADIL-J message format. Get it? It's the standard tactical digital information link message format, and the packets will be sent out cloaked by their own speech broadcast. Tell me that isn't brilliant. The plastic explosive is probably Semtex. It was developed in the former Czechoslovakia, as easy to use as C4 and just as powerful. The composition is a mix of RDX and PETN, with a detonation velocity of over 26,000 feet per second, with temperatures reaching up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It was probably the explosive used in the Pan Am 103 bombing over Lockerbie in 1988.
If this much Semtex goes off at the same time, the tanker will disappear in 2 seconds flat.
Make sure it doesn't go off then. Don't trip the sensor, don't touch the Semtex.
Are they planning to take Metal Gear?
This is the bridge, but it's not just a place where you steer the ship. In a modern tanker, navigational, engine control, communication, and all other major operational functions are consolidated in the bridge. The ship is autopiloted via a global positioning satellite system. This is a precision instrument we're talking about here, so it's probably best to...
Not to mention interference from a major player. But this project is vital to the Marine Corps. The enemy is sometimes closer to home than you think, gentlemen. Always bear that in mind. Ours is not the only military project devoted to Metal Gear development, but it cannot be more different in nature from the Navy's. Theirs is a program that will add fuel to the uncontrolled fire of nuclear proliferation. It is a fact that players in favor of such a policy are attempting to derail our own Ray project. But I promise you that they will not succeed. I have a daughter, and it is my greatest wish never to have her or her children experience the horror of nuclear war. As a father, I want to leave a better world for the future generation. As a soldier, I know that is my duty. The proliferation and development of Metal Gear technology are about to render agreements like the NPT and START obsolete. There are also forces at work trying to exploit this disturbing trend to further their own power and influence. The human race is about to slide back into the endless arms race of that last century. And we cannot afford to play that Russian roulette again. The Metal Gear Ray you see is here to prevent that possibility. The brain drain of nuclear specialists and the black market trade in weapons-grade plutonium has been fueling a cottage industry in nuclear weapons since late last century. Add Metal Gear to the mix, and the result is the renewed proliferation you see the world over. We once lived in the shadow of the Doomsday Machine. This Metal Gear Ray can bring other Metal Gears under control and ensure that we never know that fear again. And we, the Marines, will be the guardians of this peace. The National Missile Defense Program was initiated in the end of the 20th century, projected to completion in 2005. However, the NMD trial conducted in the year 2000 was a complete failure, and the success of the 1999 trials is now considered a chance happening. There was no technological solution in sight, and the program was already attracting strong criticism from Russia and China for its potential violation of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Agreement. The fact that any development in missile defense would trigger accelerated weapons development has been pointed out from the very beginning. Former President Sears did also act towards reducing the nuclear stockpile while nurturing the NMD concept. It was he who lowered START 3's ceiling for tactical nuclear weapons in order to bring Russia around to approving a revision to the ABM Treaty. Everyone believed the world was headed for the end of the arms race when Shadow Moses happened. Even though the development of Metal Gear Rex is still outside the bounds of official truth, everyone in the international military community knows the facts. Its specs spread across the globe like wildfire, and the nuclear race is on again. The only thing that can reverse its course is this Metal Gear Ray. Metal Gear Ray is amphibious. Unlike the Army's Rex, it can cruise deep underwater, move in undetected, and make its landing on any shoreline. Its onboard Joint Tactical Information Distribution System identifies targets with unerring accuracy and takes them out with massive firepower. It is the ultimate weapon, and it is yours to guard. I'd like you all to think about what that means. This Metal Gear Ray is a prototype, designed to be operated by an onboard pilot. In its final form, Ray will be unmanned, driven by tele-existence and an autonomous control system. The importance of next-generation technology such as C4ISR and RMA in battle situation has been discussed time and again, but Ray is the first to deploy it so fully. With Ray's completion, the Marine Corps will lead the way for a new age of military tactics. We will proceed out of New York Harbor and conduct top-secret field testing of Ray. Shadow Moses has turned public opinion against weapons development, and this training needs to stay covert. We cannot risk jeopardizing the program on the eve of its completion. The disguised oil tanker is a part of our cover. Ray is well worth all these precautions. Trust me. This new model of Metal Gear is codenamed Ray, after the great Manta Ray. Our Ray has a sting that nature never gave the Manta. With this latest Metal Gear, we can rule the sea and land as we never have before. President Sears forced the NMD proposal through and succeeded in deploying the program. Some say that it was a military interest, with plans for the $100 billion program budget that actually arranged the legislative approval. The Metal Gear Rex development on Shadow Moses was supposedly the first preparatory measure taken against the future possibility of reduced nuclear defense capability. NMD technology leaked to other nations would make that contingency likely, but if this theory is correct, it means that there was a calculated intent to cash in on this opportunity by specific interests within the military-industrial complex. We are here today to flush out and rid our country of these corrupting forces. That is our mission, and you will bear that in mind. It is an undeniable fact that there is a force at work in our government and within the military, seeking to control national affairs to suit its own interests. Metal Gear Ray bears the burden of confronting this party, thwarting their plans and guiding this nation back to its original path. George Sears surrendered his presidency in the aftermath of Shadow Moses. The official reason given did not, of course, include the development of Metal Gear Rex and next-generation nuclear warheads. But even you will have heard rumors that he was forced to resign after the failed cover-up cost him his influence in the political community. In the light of the military dominance spelled out by Ray. The shift in the balance of power will mean a new world order, and we, the Marine Corps, will play a central role in its military affairs. Some say that the strategic importance of aircraft carriers will be reduced by the completion of Ray. The opposition from the Navy is an undeniable fact. There is a lot of pressure from Navy brass, especially those with submarine and air background. Not to mention interference from a major player. But this project is vital to the Marine Corps. The enemy is sometimes closer to home than you think, gentlemen. Always bear that in mind. Ours is not the only military project devoted to Metal Gear development, but it cannot be more different in nature from the Navy's.